All right, let's do predictions for the Charlotte Major groups. So we saw the groups a little bit ago and I did that overview video, but now we're doing the actual predictions. And before I get into this, let me show this other thing. This came out a few days ago, but I don't think I've talked about it in a video yet. So this basically says that W7M, Team 1, and Furia, so those are 3 of the teams from LATAM, 3 of the 4 teams from LATAM, will not be able to make it to Charlotte. They'll be playing remotely from an Ubisoft studio in Mexico. So they'll still be playing at the Major, but they will be playing remotely and thus online, and so there's ping considerations there, and obviously this is much worse for the audience, and maybe I'll reference this stuff a little bit more as we go, but let's get back to the actual predictions. Okay, so Group A, B, C, D will go down the line, and we'll just start with Group A. So this is the group with 2 APAC teams. We have Elevate and Direwolves, and then we also have Oxygen and Team 1. Team 1 won a major last year, but this is a different roster. Only Lagonis is still around and joined by 4 new players. Oxygen didn't win anything last year, but they attended a few events. They did okay. I mean, most notably okay at the SIs. They only made it to 1 major, and then they got grouped. And that had to do with the fact that they didn't get to play with their full team. Direwolves, I believe this is their first international LAN. And then we have Elevate, who were the most successful APAC team last year in terms of international events. That is present. So that would be Damwon, but they are not at this event. So it is now Elevate, first seed of APAC, and the most successful, most tenured APAC team coming into it, which seems a bit weird. Okay, so APAC still seems like the weakest region, maybe not by a massive margin. It's a bit hard to call, but also seemingly the best representative is not here in Damwon. The reason for that largely has to do with ping, and they've been playing the APAC playoffs online rather than in person like they used to do, so they're playing with like massive pings and other issues. So, I mean, that's probably responsible for determining which teams actually made it here. Not to say that these teams aren't necessarily deserving, but I mean, probably at least one of them snatched a spot from a more deserving team. But probably Elevate would have made it anyways, I would think. So they're possibly APAC's best shot. Who do I think is actually going to make it out of this group? I mean, I'll keep it simple here. I think A and D are a little bit easier to call than B and C. I think Oxygen and Team 1 probably make it out. I think it's possible that Elevate make it out over Team 1. And it's even possible that Oxygen don't make it through. They seem to still be in that honeymoon period that Oxygen always goes through. The 3 core players have been around forever, and then they always get 2 new players, and they always do pretty well. And maybe they are already going out of that honeymoon phase. They were really good around the first half of the this stage, and then they fell off a little bit in the second half, took a few losses. So, right, maybe they are indeed transitioning out of the honeymoon phase, but I imagine they're still going to do pretty well to, I guess, I'd say the most experienced team here, despite 2 of the players not really having international experience. Elevate has some amount, but Oxygen has just 3 extremely experienced players. So I think that's going to shine through here. I also think that all of the NA teams have an innate advantage in that they are playing on home turf. And I mean, some number of the players aren't actually from the United States, like Canadian and Kino and some of the other players. But okay, they're playing in NA and they don't have to travel that far compared to some of the other teams. Some of the LATAM teams, and I guess most of them aren't even traveling all the way here, but then European teams got to come over the ocean, and APAC teams have to come from all the way in APAC. So I think that advantages them. They'll also have the crowds at their back. All right, so Team 1 is one of the teams that is playing remotely, and that does seem to benefit LATAM teams if they are still this very aggressive region. People have thought them to be, and I mean, I still think they are. Maybe not as much. Maybe the gap has lessened a little bit here, but still, a pretty aggressive region. I think it was Lycan, the coach of SSG, that was pointing it out, that this should advantage the LATAM teams that are playing remotely, the ones that are playing for Mexico, because if we assume they are all the most aggressive teams in any given matchup, of none of them are actually in the same group, because the only LATAM team that should actually be there is Liquid, and they're one of the LATAM teams that is in the same group as another LATAM team. So, right, this should advantage them, and I mean, if you don't know why, right, when you swing around a corner, you have more peeker's advantage when you have a higher ping. So, in that regard, it definitely advantages you. It's not the only way, but that's the most known phenomenon that's going on there. So, yeah, I think Team 1 probably makes it out. They are sort of a fresh team, but I think they impressed making it to this event over teams like FaZe and Ninjas in Pajamas. So I think they make it out, and possibly just because they have the 2 APAC teams. Okay, so I'm going to go with Oxygen, Team 1, Elevate, Direwolves one more time if I didn't say it before. All right, Group B, Liquid, Cyclops, Furia, and Xset. I think most people are going to have Liquid on top of this group. Liquid usually does pretty well early at events, and then at some point they just completely fall off. That definitely is what happened at the 6 Invitational. They were absolutely killing it, and then Nesk had like the worst series of all time by his standards or whatever, and so they lost to TSM and this and that. Okay. They're probably going to perform here. They're hungrier than ever. They're one of the only LATAM teams present here. I don't know if that's going to benefit them or not. In some regard, maybe. Some regard, not. Okay, so they have to play against Cyclops, one of the teams, and Cyclops didn't do too well internationally last year. They almost made it out of the groups at Mexico, but their dream was stamped out by Team 1, who went on to win that event. They also got grouped at the 2 SIs, so not the most electric performances. Maybe this meta will benefit them. Maybe they now have enough experience under their belts, but this is sort of a tough-looking group. I expect Cyclops to go out to not proceed forward to the playoffs. Then Furia and Xset, and Furia an actual Brazilian team, and then Xset an NA team that has several Brazilians on it. This one's tough to call because Xset did surprise quite a lot in this stage. Furia did also to some extent, but not nearly as much. Xset, it was unclear. They had a lot of talent, and it seemed like maybe they would be a top 4 team at some point. But I think a lot of people didn't expect them to be top 4 right away. It even looked like they could have been like 2nd or 3rd, but they did get leapfrogged by Dark Zero. Dark Zero at the end there. I think the lack of experience as a team is going to come back to bite them. Yaga and Kino are pretty experienced in terms of international play at this point. Spirits has a little bit, but as a team, really, they don't have much. Furia has a ton of experience. They were at like all the events last year. They only got grouped the one time. They do have a couple new players now, but they still have the same 3 of the same players. So I think the experience will shine through on the sides of Liquid and Furia, and I think they make it out of the groups. I think maybe Xset, even Cyclops could make it in there, but I think I'm going to go with Liquid, Furia, Xset, Cyclops. I will, of course, be rooting for Xset because that is an NA team, but we'll see. It is a tough-looking group, especially Liquid and Furia. And okay, so we'll go to Group C. Looks like the group of death, right? Heroic absolutely dominated EU, and W7M dominated LATAM. They didn't end up first seed because they did fall eventually to Liquid in the playoffs, but in terms of the regular stage, W7M was the best team. They dropped only 1 game, and it was in round 15, and it was on the very last play day, which didn't really matter too much in the grand scheme of things for them. Still, they're secure first place and whatever. So a lot of people, I think, will call those 2 getting out of the groups. I think Dark Zero has a better shot than a lot of people are giving them credit for. Dark Zero well, I mean, they have a lot more experience than every other team in the group. G2, just a newly formed team. W7M, they've been around for a little bit, but they were really bad before. They picked up some new players, and now they're really good, but they don't have any international experience. And then Heroic, also no international experience, really. So Dark Zero, the only really experienced team in this group, especially Canadian Eclipse, and then Hyper also is very experienced. And JR and Pamzu a little bit less, but still they've been to events. It's nothing new to them. So I do think it's going to benefit them, not only the experience, but also playing on the home turf. Yeah, I think they make it out of this group, but it's possible that they don't. I'm going to go with W7M 1. Maybe I'd even say Dark Zero if W7M wasn't playing remotely. But, I mean, they get to play online best of ones, and they were one of the best online best of one teams in the world. And I guess, I mean, the best team from seemingly the best region. Dark Zero had their struggles within their region. They lost to Parabellum. They almost lost to Beast Coast. Some of their games were closer than they seemed like they should have been. Maybe they got some losses they shouldn't have, but they were pretty good by the end of the stage. So I'll go with W7M, Dark Zero, Heroic, G2. I think G2 are pretty likely to go out of this group. Maybe they sneak into 3rd place. Maybe they even sneak in to make it out of the group. They definitely have the talent, one of the most talented, individually talented looking teams in the world, but they didn't show anything terribly impressive in EU. Maybe it's been enough time, but it seems like if they couldn't do it in EU, they shouldn't be able to do it here in a really, really tough group. So I'd be surprised to see them make it out, but I mean, it wouldn't be the most shocking thing ever, I suppose. And then we have Group D, Astralis, BDS, LFO, and Chiefs. Chiefs, I think, are pretty easy to count out, and I don't even think it's like an underdog. Well, it's definitely an underdog thing, right? But I don't expect them to make the unexpected run. I do expect them to go out of this group in last place. They are the 4th seed, and thus the last seed from the weakest seeming region, which is APAC. They played at the one event last year, I think it was the Sweden Major, and they went out in groups. And yeah, I just expect them to go out last. They kind of look like one of the they seem like the team with the least potential at the event. And maybe I'm just underrating them. I don't watch a lot of APAC, so it's possible they surprise, but to make it in over Astralis and BDS seems like quite the tall order, so let's talk about them. Astralis, the best team in NA. They didn't dominate their region the same way as Heroic, W7M, or Direwolves did in the regular stage, but they were also playing in a tougher region seemingly than Direwolves and Heroic, maybe even than W7M. We'll see where all of the regions fall after this event. But Astralis looked quite good, but versus some of the other teams that are here, NA teams, they lost to Oxygen, their only actual loss, and they had to beat both Xset and Dark Zero in overtime. So close affairs versus the top teams in NA, but still pretty good overall. They were the team that started Sonic's fail cascade, and maybe it wasn't really because of them, but they're the ones that highlighted it first by crushing them 7-1 on the very first playday. Yeah, they just look really good, revitalized from where they were last year, where they were close to ending in that relegation spot. And they're not very experienced. So this is another team that doesn't have another group rather, that doesn't have a ton of international experience. BDS very tenured, and I think that will probably benefit them in a relatively inexperienced group overall. The major group of players in totality, but yeah, Group D also. LFO, some experienced players, but this team hasn't been to a ton of international events. And I mean, they're just overshadowed by BDS in most ways. They ended up pretty close, only what, like 2 fewer points or something than BDS, but both being French teams, this one doesn't even have an org. They're playing for more than anyone else, I suppose, in that way that, of course, they want to win just like everyone else, but they also want to do really well in order to secure an org. I mean, they need an org at some point, right? So they're playing with their backs against their wall, with their backs against the wall in a sense, but yeah, I think still, I mean, same thing as Chiefs. It seems tough to make it out over Astralis and BDS. It's possible, but I'm going to predict against them. So BDS or Astralis, which one first place? I'm going to go with BDS. So Dark Zero over here, they have a lot of advantages, and so I give them the benefit of the doubt over Heroic. But one benefit that BDS does have over Astralis, that is sort of the opposite of over here, is the experience. Yeah, BDS, like I said, super experienced team. Astralis, not really. I'll put BDS in first place, and they're looking for some redemption after the events of the most recent 6th Invitational, which still have not yet come to light. We were still supposed to find out what happened with Rafal, and we still don't actually know. Maybe some people know, but you know, the community at large does not know. I'll put them in first place. I mean, they're still a solid team. They still have a good chance to win any given event, even though they never do win an event. But maybe this is the one. I'll put BDS in first, Astralis in second, LFO in third, and then Chiefs in fourth. And I guess that does it for the predictions. I'll just recap them really quickly. Group A, I have Oxygen, Team 1, Elevate Direwolves. In Group B, Liquid, Furia, Exit, Cyclops. In Group C, W7M, Dark Zero, Heroic, G2. And in Group D, BDS, Astralis, LFO, and Chiefs. And okay, so I guess that's going to do it. You know, if you have your own predictions and they differ greatly from mine, let me know. I mean, if you have the exact same predictions, which you might, I don't think these are the wildest predictions I'm making. Also, let me know if you have any other comments. Feel free to leave them below. Leave me a like, leave me a sub. It's very much appreciated. And with all of that being said, I will catch you guys in the next video.